fictional art for entertainment.
I want you to imagine, just for a moment, a perfectly clean, seamlessly automated future.
Okay, picturing it.
Right, so it is the year 2060, and you are living in Florida.
Sounds nice so far.
Well, yeah, the atmosphere outside your window is being scrubbed by this massive purge network, so it leaves the sky just this flawless, sparkling blue.
Wow, so no smog, no pollution.
Exactly. And your apartment, it perfectly adjusts its ambient temperature before you even realize you're cold.
Okay, I mean, that sounds incredibly convenient.
It is. And your job is entirely remote, too. You spend your days interacting with digital biometrics and operating these remote haptic therapy arms from a sterile console.
Very sci-fi.
Right? It's absolute comfort, absolute predictability. But then as you sit in your sunroom surrounded by all this perfectly engineered convenience, you realize something terrifying.
Which is?
This absolute comfort has completely, utterly erased your human joy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The friction of life is just gone, and with it, the spark of feeling alive, you're just completely numb.
It's a chilling thought experiment, honestly. Because, it doesn't sound like a dystopia of fire and brimstone.
No, not at all.
It sounds like a dystopia of, well, sterile corporate perfection. And that is exactly where we find the protagonist of today's deep dive.
Right.
We're exploring a collection of 13 highly classified intimate audio logs recorded by a woman named Elena.
She's living in this exact 2060 scenario, right?
Exactly. She and her husband Marcus are just suffocating under exactly that kind of futuristic corporate burnout. But the crazy part is, they don't escape by plugging into, like, a new digital reality or upgrading their tech.
No, they go the complete opposite direction.
They really do. Their escape hatch is something almost ancient to them. It is a physical, warped paperback book published back in 2058.
Titled People Are Still People.
That's the one?
And what we're doing today, it's incredibly special. To truly honor Elena and Marcus's journey, we are actually going to perform the excerpts of this book live for you.
Yes, like a radio play.
Exactly. We are going to step directly into their world and map the text exactly as they experienced it. So I'll be channeling the male voices, Mark, Aaron, Steve, Luke, Thomas, Pete, and Marcus.
And narrating their exact movements and contexts, right?
Right, just as they are laid out in the text.
And I will be taking on the role of the narrator, as well as voicing the female characters, so Elena, Linda, Sarah, Sam, and Cindy. And I'll similarly narrate their physical actions and emotional states aloud as we go.
It's going to be so cool.
It is. Though we do need to note right up front that the 2058 book Elena and Marcus are reading, it deals with some intensely heavy systemic and political themes.
We're very heavy.
We are talking about wealth extraction, the grip of defense contractors, and just deep inequalities within the justice system.
Right, and we should be super clear here.
Yes, we're going to neutrally explore these concepts exactly as the characters experience them in the text. We aren't taking any political sides here.
Not all.
Our mission is simply to map the ideological terrain of this source material and understand why it broke Elena and Marcus out of their numbness.
Okay, so let's start right in that pristine 2060 sunroom.
The scene opens with a calm, cinematic delivery. The narrator says, "It is Saturday afternoon in Florida, 2060. Outside, the atmospheric purge network has scrubbed the sky to a flawless, sparkling blue. Elena sinks into her comfortable sunroom chair, completely exhausted after a long day tracking automated biometric charts for the corporate insurance network. She activates her auto journal, her voice dropping into a reflective whisper.
Let's getting the scene.
Right. And Elena says in a reflective, intimate journal voice, "The electronic feeds are completely silent now, but the numbness won't leave. I don't feel joy anymore. I sit here looking at our clean air views and realize my life has turned into a predictable corporate transaction."
Just totally burnt out.
Completely, Elena continues. And it's not just me. I can see it in Marcus, too. He's exhausted from guiding those remote haptic therapy arms all day, fighting a quiet battle against his own routine. But 2 days ago, he tried to break the loop.
Marcus walks into the kitchen, a quiet determination breaking through his exhaustion, and he hands Elena a package.
What's in the package?
Well, he doesn't hand her a digital upgrade chip or, a sleek corporate asset. He hands her a physical paperback book, all wrapped up as a gift.
Wow.
Its pages are slightly warped from an offline courier transit. Marcus stands by the counter and tells her he'd been reading it, and that once she gives it a try, if she's interested, they could use it to do their own private book club right there in the living room. Just the two of them, to talk about something real again.
Elena says, flitting the heavy textured paper pages. The title is People Are Still People, printed in 2059 by a traveler named Mark. I decided to bypass the rules and just do a few random reads from the middle of the book.
Skipping right to the middle.
Yeah. Elena says, my eyes landed on a scene from 2058 under a heavy concrete overpass in Virginia. It's the story of Mark meeting a neurodivergent creator named Aaron and a combat veteran named Linda. I am noting the text down right now, letting the audio render recreate their voices as I read.
I really want to pause here because this specific choice Marcus makes, handing her a physical, warped paperback, it's just fascinating to me.
Oh, absolutely.
If you are listening to this on your commute right now, think about how much of your life is entirely digital.
Basically everything.
Right. Your photos, your bank accounts, your memories, your work. To me, Marcus handing her this book feels exactly like buying a heavy vinyl record in an age of infinite digital streaming.
That is a great analogy.
We have access to every song ever recorded on our phones, but people still crave the ritual of, like, pulling a record out of a cardboard sleeve, feeling the dust, and dropping a physical needle on the wax.
There's friction to it.
Yes. But for Marcus and Elena, this isn't just hipster nostalgia. It's about psychological survival. Why is a piece of dead wood, like this work paper, the very first thing that actually pierces Elena's digital numbness?
Because it demands her physical presence.
Exactly.
In Elena's 2060 world, human consciousness is essentially rented out to digital networks. She tracks automated biometrics, and Marcus operates remote haptic arms.
So they're never really physically there.
Right, their minds are constantly floating in the ether, untethered from their actual surroundings. They are everywhere and nowhere at once. So the tactile reality of a heavy, warped book, the smell of the paper, the friction of turning a page, the weight of it in her lap.
It grounds her.
It forces her mind back into what the text calls its biological home.
Wow, biological home. I love that phrase.
Isn't that great? Think about the nature of a digital file. It has no physical boundary. It can be altered, updated, or entirely deleted by a corporate server overnight without your consent.
Poof, just gone.
Exactly. But a physical book is sovereign. It exists in the real world. It takes up physical space, and reading it requires you to anchor yourself in the present moment.
So by handing her the book, Marcus is essentially handing her a grounding stone.
Yes.
He is physically pulling her back into her own body. And notice what Elena does immediately. She doesn't start at chapter 1.
No, she bypasses the rules.
She flips right to the middle, diving straight into the heavy humidity of 2058 Virginia. She wants to feel the friction.
Exactly. And the environment she lands in is the polar opposite of her sterile Florida sunroom.
Oh, definitely.
The story shifts back to a mid-July twilight in 2058. The narrator says, the evening air beneath the concrete Virginia overpass is 88% humidity. A small campfire burns through damp wood, sending up a thick, lazy column of smoke over a compact floor of red clay and gravel.
Really painting a picture there.
Yeah, the narrator continues. Aaron sits on a crate, rolling a smooth creek stone inside his pocket. Linda sits across from him, bundled in flannel shirts, her right index finger severed past the first knuckle from an old generator accident at an overseas airbase.
Aaron replies, his intense, fast-paced, hyperspatial, visionary voice speeding up while clicking his creek stone against his knuckles. The jet stream is dragging the upper atmosphere down, Linda. That smoke isn't just ash, it's a fleet of microscopic vessels carrying a physical record of the wilderness.
Aaron sees everything differently.
He really does. Aaron continues, if a man has the right kind of vision, he can stand right here and breathe in the charred atoms of a forest 1,000 miles away, though the folks running this town just look at the sky, cough, and call it plain old bad weather.
Linda replies, in a rough, quiet voice, like a boot dragging across gravel. I've choked on worse skies than this, Aaron. You spend 3 tours out in the desert, and your lungs get used to breathing in garbage.
Man, she has been through it.
She really has. Linda continues, I gave those defense contractors 12 years of my life, guarding their supply routes. Then my knee blew out. The medical bureaucracy hit a logjam, and the financial firms took my house while I was still waiting on an appointment card for an MRI.
That is just brutal.
And it gets worse. Linda says, my husband looked at me one night, saw the way I was shaking when the flashbacks hit at 3 in the morning, and just packed up our girl and caught a bus. Said he couldn't live with a ghost.
That is heartbreaking. But then Aaron clicks his creek stone against his knuckles again, his focus unwavering. Aaron says, 4 years in a stone cell. That's the sentence the local judge handed down to me.
Wait, what did he do?
Aaron explains, all for growing a single green cannabis plant in a spare room to slow my hyperdrive engine down so I could see the present moment. But the politicians made a minor legal adjustment to the penal code, turned a quiet habit into a mandatory quota, and dropped the iron shutters on my life.
A single plant.
Yeah. Aaron says a routine scratch of a fountain pen on a piece of paper in some air-conditioned office, and a man's entire future timeline is wiped clean off the map.
Out of the damp July fog steps a traveler carrying a weathered canvas rucksack, stopping at the edge of the firelight.
Mark steps forward, his voice carrying the distinct dry roll of a traveler. Evening. Name's Mark. Mind if I share the warmth of that timber for a spell?
So this is Mark, the author.
Exactly. Mark continues, I've been walking across the country, tracing a travel journal written by a man who walked these same roads back in 1938 during the Great Depression. I wanted to see if the map he laid out still held true today, so I'm writing my own book.
Linda replies, letting out a short, cynical laugh. Well, Mark, you can tell your readers the scenery hasn't changed much. Just traded the steam trains for diesel trucks. We sit out here in the dirt thinking the government's engine is misfiring.
But is it?
Linda says, it ain't. The machine is running exactly the way the bosses designed it to run. They draw lines using small pens and fine paper. They draw your municipal boundaries, and with one stroke, you wake up as a trespasser in your own home.
A trespasser in your own home. That line, that is what completely shatters Elena's numbness back in 2060.
It's a powerful statement.
Think about the gravity of that. You are born onto this planet, but because someone hundreds of miles away drew a line on a piece of fine paper, simply existing in a specific physical space makes you a criminal.
Right, because of zoning or municipal codes.
Exactly. And Elena realizes that her corporate insurance job does the exact same thing. She spends her days drawing algorithmic lines around patients to optimize a ledger, essentially forcing human beings into sterile compliance boxes.
She's the one holding the small pen.
Bingo.
And that realization is vital because it shifts her from a passive observer of her own burnout into an active critic of the system she participates in.
She wakes up.
She does. But Elena and Marcus soon discover that this systemic critique goes far deeper. They find a chapter they initially missed, taking place in a California park. And here, Aaron maps out what he calls the hierarchy of extraction.
A hierarchy of extraction.
Yeah, detailing exactly how the economy functions when you fall below the traditional safety nets.
The narrator sets the scene. A public park smells of ozone, damp cedar, and gasoline from a nearby 4-lane avenue. Sunlight fractures through the canopy, throwing gold patterns across an iron bench where Linda sits rigid, her eyes tracking a white patrol cruiser idling by the curb. Her denim jacket obscures her missing right index fingertip. Aaron sits beside her, methodically rolling a smooth, gray creek stone over his knuckles.
Linda says, in a flat, combat-trained whisper, "Keep moving the stone, Aaron." Cops are circling the loop again.
Aaron replies, his intense, hyperspatial intellect voice dropping to a clinical rhythm. They won't see us if we blend into the data. They're looking for vagrancy. We're discussing asset optimization.
Linda replies, pulling a crumpled piece of notebook paper from her pocket. We need a tactical map just to eat this week. Monday is the community pantry. Wednesday is the church dinner.
Trying to string together a survival plan.
Exactly. Linda says, if my VA disability check doesn't clear the federal hold and your SSI check gets docked again for an administrative mix-up, we are completely underwater. How do people even move back up in America from where we are sitting right now?
Aaron clicks the stone against his ring, mapping the invisible economy. Aaron says, by finding the systemic friction, there is a hierarchy to how you extract money from this country without a traditional master.
Okay, here we go.
Aaron says, you start at the absolute floor, scraping what the system leaves behind with zero risk tracking forgotten utility deposits through missing money, or using library computers to file legitimate corporate legal claims via top-class actions.
So just scraping the very bottom of the barrel.
Right. And Aaron continues, if you want more friction, you do digital labor. Scraping directories to track statutory text spam violations, suing robocallers and small claims, or labeling data to train AI models. It's a grind, but it keeps you out of the sun.
Linda watches the cruiser tap its brakes before moving on. Linda says, that's just trading time for pennies, hoping a bureaucracy signed a check. What if we actually want to leverage?
Aaron's voice drops deeper into that clinical rhythm. Then you need the engine of capital. But to play with money, you have to have money. If you don't, you fake it.
Fake it.
Aaron explains. You take a 0% APR promotional credit line, draw the cash advance, and route it into a high-yield account or a peer-to-peer lending protocol like Prosper to pocket the interest spread.
Wow, okay.
Or, Aaron says, you sell options, premiums-covered calls, and cash-secured puts to extract immediate cash flow. But if the market crashes or the protocol freezes, the bank repossesses your life.
High stakes.
Extremely. Aaron finishes. If you don't have the capital to risk and you refuse the traditional labor market, you only have one asset left to liquidate: the biological basement.
Linda's voice drops to a hard whisper. The biological market.
Aaron speaks softly, almost reverently, about the horror of it. Phase I clinical trials. First in human drug safety testing, selling rare blood antibodies to private biotech firms, undergoing multi-week isolation sleep studies for university medical centers.
Oh my gosh.
Aaron says they will pay mid-five figures to lock you in a clean room for 20 days and pump unapproved compounds into your veins. Stool donations for microbiota transplants or bioproducts. The system always gets its pound of flesh, Linda.
Linda replies, letting out a short, humorless laugh. So that's the bottom of the rabbit hole. You either already have wealth to exploit the system, you sell your daily labor to a corporate machine, or you sell your physical self to a laboratory.
It's grim.
Linda says, strip away the institutional paperwork, and it's just clean, legal prostitution of the flesh for science.
Okay, I have to stop us right here and unpack this because Aaron just dropped a massive amount of financial terminology, and we really need to understand exactly what he is talking about.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Let's look at the engine of capital part first. He mentions taking a 0% APR promotional credit line and routing it into a peer-to-peer lending protocol like Prosper to pocket the interest spread, or selling options premiums like covered calls and cash-secured puts.
Right.
I mean, how on earth does someone living in a public park actually execute these high-level financial maneuvers to survive?
Well, it's all about financial arbitrage. Essentially, it's playing the gap between different systems.
Okay, break that down for me.
Let's look at the credit trick first. Aaron is describing a scenario where an individual with a decent credit score, but no actual cash, receives a credit card offer with 0% interest for, say, 12 or 18 months.
Like those junk mail offers we all get.
Exactly. So they draw a cash advance from that card, let's say $10,000. Now they have $10,000 in cash, and they don't owe any interest on it for a year.
Right.
They take that borrowed cash and lend it out on a peer-to-peer platform like Prosper.
And Prosper is just a site where everyday people fund each other's personal loans.
Precisely. If Aaron lends out that 10 grand at a 7% return, he pockets the interest and then pays back the original $10,000 to the credit card before the promotional period ends.
He essentially created money out of thin air by acting as a middleman.
Exactly. He leveraged leverage.
Wow. Okay, so what about the options premiums? The covered calls and cash-secured puts, I know those are stock market terms, but how do they function as survival tools?
Okay, so imagine you own 100 shares of a company and the stock is at $50. You can sell a covered call, which is essentially a contract giving someone else the right to buy your shares for $55 within the next month.
Okay, I follow.
For giving them that right, they pay you a cash premium right now, let's say $100. If the stock never reaches $55, the contract expires, you keep your shares, and you keep their $100.
And a cash-secured put.
It's the opposite. You promise to buy the stock if it drops to $45, and someone pays you cash right now for that insurance. Aaron is pointing out that if you have even a little bit of capital, you can act like a casino, selling probability to gamblers and collecting the premiums as immediate cash flow to buy groceries.
That is wild, but the catch is monumental. As Aaron says, if the market crashes or the peer-to-peer protocol freezes, the bank repossesses your life. You're wiped out because you were playing with borrowed money.
Exactly. The risk is massive.
And that brings us to the most terrifying part of this entire scene, the biological basement. If you have no capital to play these arbitrage games and you refuse to sell your labor to a standard corporation, your only remaining asset is your actual physical body.
Your blood plasma, your stool.
Your nervous system reacting to unapproved compounds.
Right. And this is where the fiction perfectly mirrors reality. Think about the modern gig economy. We talk a lot about people driving for rideshare apps or delivering food to make ends meet, which is trading time for money.
Sure.
But beneath that gig economy is a biological economy that is rarely talked about. Across the country, thousands of people survive solely by donating plasma twice a week.
Literally selling parts of themselves.
They are literally selling the liquid portion of their blood to pharmaceutical companies just to pay their utility bills. Aaron takes it a step further to Phase I clinical trials, first in human drug testing.
So dangerous.
You're paid tens of thousands of dollars, but the cost is locking yourself in a sterile medical facility while scientists monitor how your liver and kidneys react to experimental synthetic compounds.
It's literal flesh capitalism. It's like the system operates on this vampiric logic. If it can't extract your time or your money, it extracts your biology. Your literal cellular material becomes a commodity.
It is deeply disturbing.
And this deeply affects Elena when she reads it, because as a medical professional in 2060, she suddenly sees her patients not as data points on a ledger, but as human beings being driven into this biological extraction by the very insurance systems she manages.
Right. She realizes she is part of the machine that pushes them into the basement.
But right at this darkest realization, the narrative offers an alternative.
The narrator says, "Out of the shadow of the cedar trees steps a traveler carrying a weathered canvas rucksack, dropping his heavy pack onto a picnic table."
Mark speaks with his steady, dry traveler voice. Or you write your own contract. Caught the tail end of that. Last time I passed through this county and ran into you two by the river, you sang Wayfaring Stranger. You sang it so well the cicadas stopped to listen.
Mark has a plan.
He does. Mark continues, here is my idea. You use what you actually have. You have a story, and you have those voices. You record yourself singing right here on this old phone I'm laying on the table. You go down to the public library, use their open Wi-Fi, and post it to YouTube.
A digital exit route.
Right. Mark says, share the raw story of how you're surviving between the food banks and the administrative holds. You bypass the laboratories and the banks entirely.
Mark hands them a tangled piece of legacy hardware, an old smartphone. Elena notes in her log that this is the exact kind of discarded technology that the modern world throws away.
Trash to one person, a lifeline to another.
Exactly. But in the hands of sovereign minds, legacy hardware becomes a tactical asset. It completely short-circuits the hierarchy of extraction. They don't have to sell their blood to a lab or borrow money from a bank if they can monetize their story directly, peer-to-peer.
Aaron grabs the phone and the tangled charging block, his mind already calculating the logistics. Aaron says the library limits computer terminal usage to 2 hours per session, but the outlets in the lobby are unmetered. We can build it into the schedule.
Linda's military precision takes over as she cracks open an iced tea. Linda says, Monday morning we hit the pantry. From there, we march straight to the library. We plug the phone into the lobby wall for a full charge cycle while we edit the audio on the open terminals.
So tactical.
Linda continues, Tuesday we record in the park when the background traffic noise drops after midday rush hour. Wednesday we use the church Wi-Fi to upload the secondary files. It beats selling your blood to a corporation. Let's record the first track before the sun goes down.
This sparks an incredible evolution in the text. They start a YouTube vlog to document their survival, but how do you turn a digital survival vlog into a tangible exit route for thousands of other people?
Right, because just logging isn't enough to build infrastructure.
Elena reads about a man named Steve meeting Aaron and Linda on a muddy riverbank.
The narrator says, the summer of 2058. A slow, thick river reflects a slate-gray sky like a sheet of unpolished zinc. Linda sits on an overturned plastic bucket by the mud bank, her eyes fixed on a red and white plastic bobber. A few yards downstream, Aaron untangles a line from a willow branch, his grounding stone heavy in his pocket. Footsteps crunch on the dry river stones as Steve walks down the embankment path, keeping his hands visible.
Steve speaks in a respectful, focused voice, Aaron. Linda. My name's Steve. I'm a friend of Mark's. Met him back down the line. I've been tracking the network metrics from the library computers. Your raw video, the one breaking down the tactical timeline of surviving an administrative asset freeze, just crossed 40,000 views.
Wow, 40,000.
Right. Steve says, Mark wants me to explore a direct-to-consumer digital asset option with you. Aaron steps onto the gravel, his hyperspatial mind instantly rendering a data spreadsheet. Aaron says, 40,000 hits means a high-density, unmonetized information bottleneck. But standard streaming network ad shares take nearly half the margin, and the payout cycle is delayed 30 days. We're still fishing for lunch.
Steve replies, that's exactly why I walked down here. You're giving away high-value intelligence for free. Mark thinks you need to package this survival map into an ebook and sell it directly via a digital transaction link on your stream.
A direct sale.
Steve continues, look at the data across the state right now. The average person living in a mortgaged suburban home is terrified. They see the systems tightening. They will gladly pay for an emergency manual before the floor drops out from under them. Linda turns around on her bucket, her tactical interest caught. Linda says, an emergency manual for the invisible infrastructure. Is this a blueprint to assist people across the country?
Step drops his voice into a focused, rhythmic pitch. Yes, centralized systems aren't handing out safety nets anymore. Mark is exploring ways to get a peer-to-peer survival network built. You need to map out the hardware pipeline and the power share protocol to build self-reliance. Aaron immediately grabs a pencil, sketching a chapter hierarchy directly onto a piece of weathered driftwood.
Love that visual.
Aaron says the hierarchy unifies the data. 1, the invisible grid of safe sleeping zones and unmonetized meal hubs. 2, the hardware pipeline for device recycling directories. 3, the power share protocol for secure network sharing. We publish the download link via an open platform terminal. $3, a secure lifeline.
Linda drops a wriggling bluegill into her plastic bucket. Linda says, we add it to the routine. Monday morning pantry, afternoon at the public terminal for the upload. Tuesday, we draft the ebook chapters right here by the water. We aren't just surviving the dark anymore, Aaron. We're mapping it so Mark can use it to get people to assist each other.
This is a brilliant pivot. Aaron realizes that relying on YouTube's ad revenue just keeps them subservient to another massive corporation.
Right, because the platform takes half their margin and makes them wait 30 days to get paid.
And meanwhile, they are literally fishing in a muddy river for their lunch.
They need cash now.
They need direct peer-to-peer commerce, a $3 manual that completely bypasses the corporate toll booths. But to truly map this invisible infrastructure on a national scale, they need physical space. And that leads them to Luke in the public library.
The narrator says, the interior of a public library smells of floor wax and old paper. Luke sits at a corner wood table near an open-source terminal stack, a sleek black tablet propped up beside a legal pad. The glass doors hiss open. Linda walks in first, her denim jacket obscuring her missing fingertip. Aaron follows, his left hand methodically turning his gray creek stone to ground his fractured memory against the fluorescent glare.
Luke speaks in a low, library-enforced murmur. Aaron, Linda, have a seat. Steve told me I'd find you here for your Monday device charging cycle. I've been tracking your streaming analytics. The peer-to-peer survival map you're building is hitting a nerve. But there's a beautiful, unutilized asset in this country waiting to be uncovered, the church land grid.
The church land grid. That is an interesting pivot.
Aaron leans in, his hyperspatial mind instantly overlaying the satellite map with property zoning data. Aaron says, thousands of tax-free acres, protected by federal religious land statutes. Municipal networks can't easily execute zoning sweeps if it's legally framed as a community religious exercise. Luke's voice softens with quiet optimism.
Exactly.
American churches spend millions every year financing missionary trips overseas to build infrastructure. The compassion is already there. They just need help seeing how to channel that same energy into the economic wreckage right on their own doorstep.
Bringing the mission home.
Luke says, they can bring the mission home. These churches have the land, the tax exemptions, and the volunteers to build safe, managed campgrounds, private sanctuaries with shared sanitation nodes and unmetered power loops. If you link your audience with theirs, you turn a local survival map into a national invitation for community care.
Linda's eyes narrow as she studies the coordinates. Linda says, it's about redirecting the focus. Communities stepping in with a centralized state falls short. We've got 40 minutes left on this library terminal. Aaron, draft the script. Let's show America how to build a sanctuary together.
I am fascinated by this concept of the church land grid. Like, are they just organizing charity here, or are they effectively building a parallel, decentralized society using the system's own zoning loopholes?
It's definitely leaning toward a parallel society.
Because zoning laws are notoriously strict. If you try to set up a campground in a suburban neighborhood, the city will shut you down immediately. But Luke is pointing out that religious institutions operate under completely different legal protections.
Is absolute structural brilliance.
Yeah.
Luke recognizes that you don't need to overthrow the system to find sanctuary. You just need to understand its legal architecture better than it does.
Oh.
Churches own massive amounts of untaxed land. By framing mutual aid and housing as a core religious exercise, they create an umbrella of legal protection against municipal sweeps.
So they use the system's rules against itself.
Exactly. They are taking the exact legal protections designed to insulate religious wealth and weaponizing them in a completely peaceful, constructive way to create domestic sanctuaries. They are redirecting existing compassion, untaxed land, and unmetered power loops toward the domestic economic wreckage.
It transforms a localized, desperate survival map into a national architecture of autonomy.
It really does.
But, it forces us to ask a critical question. While Aaron and Linda are in the mud building this, who exactly is watching them? Who is the audience buying this $3 ebook?
Right. Who are the consumers of this content?
Elena dives into an encrypted online forum run by Mark, where readers of the 2058 text are posting their real-time reactions. And she finds a thread by two tech professionals in California, Pete and Sam.
The narrator says, a Northern California coffee shop smells of burnt espresso and sterile overcooled air. Pete taps his temple with a napkin, his screen reflecting Aaron and Linda's survival logs. Sam sits across from him holding a warm mug of tea.
Pete speaks in an analytical, flat, hyperspatial intellect voice. Look at the data streams on this channel, Sam. Aaron and Linda are building an asymmetric informational bridge out there, but they're walking straight into an ideological minefield. It's classic historical factionalism.
Sam replies, adjusting her glasses, keeping her voice beneath the hum of the espresso machine. The comments are already cannibalizing each other. It's not just a story to these people anymore. It's an ink blot test for their own political anxieties. The purists want $1 trillion budget bill, and the suburban property line hawks frame it as the threat. The algorithms feed on that polarization.
Pete nods. Exactly. When the central authority phrase, any decentralized mutual aid, looks like an insurgency to the system, if they keep posting, they run the risk of getting flagged. But it's Swiss cheese up here in my head tonight, Sam. The data links up out of nowhere, but if I don't catch the thought when it flashes across the gap, the wire drops and the memory disappears.
Sam opens her digital wallet on her phone.
Mm-hmm.
Sam says, let them fight in the comments, Pete.
Mm-hmm.
I'm setting up a recurring monthly donation to their platform link. We're sitting in a warm cafe with tech salaries, but we're just lucky right now.
It's lucky right now.
Sam says, we have jobs that could be completely stripped away by one bad algorithm update or a medical bill next month. If our luck holds, we fund the ones who are building the exit routes.
We're just lucky right now. That hits incredibly hard.
It's very self-aware.
It is. If you work a comfortable corporate job today, it is so easy to view people struggling as fundamentally different from you. But Pete and Sam don't consume Aaron and Linda's content as poverty tourism.
No, not at all.
They are highly paid tech workers who recognize that their stability is a complete illusion. They are one algorithm update, one corporate merger, or one severe medical diagnosis away from joining Aaron in the biological basement.
They know they aren't immune.
So they are funding this exit route as a personal insurance policy.
And this realization leads Pete and Sam into one of the most profound philosophical discussions in the entire text, a concept they call the expensive perimeter. Elena reads another journal entry from them set in a pizza parlor where they analyze how justice actually operates when you have wealth versus when you have nothing.
The narrator sets the scene. A foggy California night in 2058. The air inside a local pizzeria is thick with the aroma of baked dough, bubbling mozzarella, and charred pepperoni. Pete traces the edge of a hot metal pan while Sam stares across the booth with intense focus.
Sam says, quiet but sharp, slamming her soda cup down. It makes absolutely no logical sense, Pete. The syndicate boss bleeds the entire coast dry, causes thousands of bankruptcies, and breaks every baseline rule. And what do politicians do? They sign a quiet piece of paper and exile him to a private luxury villa in a non-extradition country with his family. How is that justice?
Pete replies in his analytical, flat, hyperspatial intellect voice, "It's not justice, Sam. It's an expensive perimeter. It's a structural design feature. When a billionaire boss gets caught, the system doesn't treat him like a criminal. They repeat the exact same mistake the European powers made with Napoleon Bonaparte back in 1814.
Ah, history lesson.
Pete says, they exiled him to Elba, a beautiful Mediterranean island, let him keep his royal title, and because he retained his freedom and underground networks, it took him exactly 10 months to slip past the guards and start another bloody war.
Sam replies, a cold, cynical smile touching the edge of her lips. Because the elites protect their own class. A desperate man with no money gets caught stealing a basic meal just to stay alive, and the system makes a minor legal adjustment to throw him in a cage for 4 years. No beach houses. Their asset line hits absolute zero because they don't have the capital to buy an island.
Pete takes a slow sip of black coffee, his analytical edge completely leaving his voice. Throughout history, it's always the same penalty. The law exists to protect the property, not the people. But hey, that handles the movie analysis. What's the operational itinerary for next Friday's outing? Let's vote for the Downtown Modern Art Museum exhibit. My spatial engine could use some clean geometric lines to look at after all this systemic friction.
Pete's analogy of Napoleon on Elba is devastatingly accurate. The expensive perimeter isn't a glitch in a broken justice system. It is the system working exactly as designed.
It's a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. The billionaire keeps his capital and gets an island because the perimeter is designed to insulate wealth. Look at modern white-collar crime versus blue-collar crime. A corporate executive who embezzles millions might get house arrest in a gated community, while someone caught with minor narcotics loses years of their life in a concrete cell.
Just like Aaron.
Right. Aaron, who grew a single plant, lost 4 years of his life because his asset line was zero. He had no perimeter to protect him.
But I gotta say, I want to push back on how Pete and Sam handle this realization.
What do you mean?
Well, Pete literally outlines this bleak, crushing reality and then immediately says, that handles the movie analysis. Let's go to a modern art museum. Isn't that just sticking their heads in the sand?
I can see why you say that.
It feels like the ultimate form of privileged apathy. They see the system is rigged, they drop a few bucks in Aaron's virtual tip jar, and then they go look at clean geometric lines to feel better.
That is a very valid critique, but I would argue it's actually an incredibly sophisticated defense mechanism.
Defense mechanism.
Yeah, they aren't ignoring the reality. They are acknowledging the darkness of the machine, but actively refusing to let the machine dictate their internal emotional state.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
If they spend every waking moment raging against a system they cannot individually dismantle, they will burn out and become completely useless to themselves and to Aaron. By choosing to go to the art museum, they are consciously managing their internal climate. They are drawing a firm boundary around their own minds, ensuring that the systemic friction doesn't rot their personal peace.
That's a fair point. You can't dismantle the machine if your own engine is on fire.
Exactly.
And this resonates deeply with Elena in 2060. She realizes she needs to manage her own internal climate, particularly inside her marriage to Marcus. But instead of critiquing the government, she has to look inside her own house.
Right. The systemic friction isn't just out there in the world, it's in her living room.
So she dives deeper into Mark's blog and uncovers a terrifying marital mirror. This brings us to a 2058 couple named Thomas and Sarah. And listener, prepare yourself, because this is where the text gets incredibly dystopian, and we are going to have to debate the ethics of this heavily.
The narrator says, a predictable rain loop hits the glass roof of a modern house in Virginia. Thomas watches the moisture sheet down, his fingers tracing the smooth, seamless edge of a solid walnut dining table. Across from him sits Sarah, the amber glow of a kitchen pendant illuminating the sharp lines of the quartz countertop. There is only a vast, sterile space of absolute operational clarity.
Thomas speaks with the flat, measured cadence of an engineer. The contract is simple, Sarah. We are born alone. For years, we performed a social script we thought we were supposed to play, the soulmates, the perfect psychological fusion. It was an illusion. Our minds are separate sovereign territories. We were just consuming each other's internal energy, trying to force those boundaries to merge.
Very clinical.
Thomas continues, I waive traditional property ownership of your body entirely. I want absolute bodily sovereignty for both of us. We coexist, we manage the infrastructure of this house, and we support each other's worldly wishes out of deliberate goodwill, not systemic obligation.
Sarah replies with a grounded, measured tone. Historically, marriage was never meant to be a soulmate portal. It was an economic alliance designed to manage property. The moment modern society demanded one single human being act as a financial anchor, a best friend, and an erotic ideal all at once, the system buckled.
She has a point about history, but wow.
Sarah says, I didn't want a divorce. The logistical costs of fracturing our co-parenting unit and liquidating assets are a terrible business decision. We needed a structural stabilization tool. The narrator says, Sarah walks toward the dimly lit hallway. When she returns, she is followed by a state-of-the-art, life-size AI robotic assistant. Her medical-grade silicone skin catches the amber light, her internal microservos operating with a near-silent hydraulic hum.
Oh boy.
Sarah's voice drops into a tone of strategic command. This is the next step of the timeline. She has no internal mind to control, no separate reality to protect, and no boundaries to cross. She will assist in addressing your physical needs. An open marriage introduces an outside competitor with unpredictable demands, which drains the cognitive energy you owe to our partnership.
So the robot is a compromise.
Sarah says this robot is a capital investment, an extension of our business needs. Just as we outsourced the physical labor of our lawn to an automated machine, we are outsourcing the physical utility of release. This machine is a tool you own. I am your equal partner. Our contract places me fundamentally above her. I will not compete with a simulation.
Wait, stop the tape. I am visibly shocked reading this. They are outsourcing physical intimacy to an AI robot to protect cognitive energy.
That's their logic.
It sounds incredibly dystopian. They're treating their marriage like a sterile corporate merger. Sarah literally says the logistical costs of divorce are a terrible business decision. It is so deeply clinical that it completely strips away every romantic notion we've ever been taught about human connection.
It really does.
Isn't this just the ultimate form of emotional cowardice? They are removing the friction of human intimacy simply because it's hard work.
It is undeniably jarring. And to our modern sensibilities, it feels cold and calculated. But we have to look at the logic Sarah presents. She points out a massive historical shift. For thousands of years, marriage was essentially an economic and logistical alliance. It was about property, farming, and raising children safely.
It's true.
It wasn't until very recently in human history that society demanded that your spouse also be your absolute best friend, your intellectual equal, and your erotic ideal for 50 years straight. Sarah argues that placing the burden of all those needs onto one single human being causes the system to buckle.
So she just removes one of the burdens entirely.
By outsourcing the raw biological need for release to a non-sentient machine, she removes the pressure and resentment that was destroying their daily peace.
I understand the logic, I really do, but reducing human intimacy to a biological utility like mowing the lawn, it just feels like you are killing the very soul of the relationship.
You'd think so, right?
But against all odds, Elena reads the 6-month update they posted to the blog, and it entirely subverts our expectations. We expect this clinical separation to destroy Thomas and Sarah, but they report a profound paradox.
The narrator says, 6 months later, the rain still patterns the glass roof in Virginia, but the clinical coldness of their initial contract has softened into a deep, quiet sanctuary. By outsourcing raw biological release to the lower-level utility, Thomas has completely dismantled the invisible pressure cookers that used to destroy their daily peace.
The pressure cooker is gone.
The narrator continues, because he no longer views Sarah as a tool to relieve his physical tension, he no longer resents her when she's tired, detached, or simply inhabiting her own mind. Paradoxically, removing that expectation has completely transformed how Thomas manages his spiritual awareness when he is with her.
Thomas's voice returns, but now it is sovereign, completely present, and quiet. I am finally completely present. When I hold Sarah's hand or pull her into a hug in the kitchen, it isn't a performative preamble to sex or an attempt to extract an emotional high.
No more ulterior motives.
Thomas says, because I know we are two separate consciousnesses sharing a passing physical dream, those small touch points have become incredibly sacred. A kiss is no longer a transaction, it's a beautiful, deliberate act of relational resonance.
Sarah replies, her voice now grounded and full of deep affection. We are two sovereign beings, fully aware of our separate realities, choosing to play a beautiful duet out of pure goodwill. I am no longer an actor forced to play a role, and Thomas is no longer a spectator demanding a performance. We stepped entirely out of the theater, and in doing so, we finally found a real, unvarnished peace.
A kiss is no longer a transaction. Okay, I admit that is incredibly powerful.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
By completely removing the performative pressure, they found genuine affection. They stopped acting. And reading this acts as a brutal mirror for Elena back in 2060.
The narrator says, the text-to-speech engine powers down. Elena sits completely still in the dim light of her terminal, the heavy silence of the sunroom surrounding her.
The moment of realization.
Elena speaks, deeply vulnerable, her voice cracking with emotion. Reading Sarah's logic forced me to look into a mirror I've been running from. In my first marriage, before the clean break, I was that machine. I was an outsourced utility, an asset performing a script to optimize someone else's comfort, until I entirely ran out of capital.
She was the robot in her first marriage.
Elena says, I walked away promising myself this marriage with Marcus would be different. I thought we were building something authentic, but as we sat together during our book club session tonight, the truth hit me. I thought I was doing things differently this time, but was I?
Or did they just change the scenery?
Elena says, or did we just build a prettier, higher-tech version of the exact same theater? We stopped sharing our actual internal climates and closed this log tonight knowing that if Marcus and I don't drop our corporate shovels now, the routine will finish the job.
Elena and Marcus are terrified of becoming a hollow corporate merger. They realize their marriage is operating on autopilot, so they decide right then and there to turn to the back of Mark's book, to an appendix Marcus had already been studying.
The SM.
Right, the Sovereign Self-Alignment Matrix, or SM. This is where they start physically deconstructing the theater of their own lives.
The narrator says, late evening on the Florida grid, 2060. Outside the panoramic window, the clean air network hums perfectly in the darkness. Elena sits at her desk, the physical copy of Mark's book open beside a blank terminal screen. She activates her audio log, her voice trembling slightly with raw, emotional clarity.
I'm real.
Elena speaks, deeply vulnerable. The day was so incredibly hard. I spent my shift feeling like a ghost, living an automated life that is completely out of line with who I actually am. But last night our book club session broke the script wide open.
Marcus and Elena sat right there in the living room, and the emotional weight of their disconnected lives finally broke them. They both cried, they looked at each other and admitted that the standard roles society handed them, the perfect remote workers, the seamless consumer models, had just led them to a numb, frozen plateau.
So what do?
So they grabbed physical note pages and started mapping their actual baselines.
Elena continues on the audio track. We accept the raw, unvarnished reality. We are married, and we have corporate jobs. In the eyes of the Matrix, that means we are operating under a legal business contract.
Just like Thomas and Sarah realize.
Right. Elena says, but instead of letting that contract turn us into unfeeling machines like Thomas and Sarah, we agreed we need to find out who we are individually within this framework. We started by mapping our baseline through the SM appendix, line by line. We accept that each other's physical body is their own separate absolute residence.
Absolute residence.
Elena says, the traditional social idea of a romantic marriage for life isn't an organic law, and the cultural concept of two people merging into one body or one spirit is completely misleading. Mark's appendix maps it perfectly. We are one body only, in the sense that we share a committed, lifetime business partnership under a legal marriage license.
Which is legally true.
And Elena says, and we are one spirit, only in the context that our individual minds, physical spaces, and finances are more deeply interlinked than any normal company or corporation could ever be outside of a marriage. We are two separate consciousnesses running a highly synchronized ecosystem.
Let's really break down what they are doing here. They are rejecting the Hollywood rom-com myth that two souls merge into one indistinguishable entity. Think of it less like a corporate merger where two companies become one giant monolith and more like two neighboring sovereign countries signing a deeply comprehensive free trade agreement.
A free trade agreement. That makes a lot of sense.
Right. Country A has its own borders, its own economy, and its own internal weather. Country B has the same. They share resources, they protect each other, and their infrastructures are deeply intertwined. But Country A does not own Country B.
Exactly.
If Country B is experiencing a drought, Country A can offer support, but it cannot fundamentally change Country B's weather.
That is the perfect analogy. By establishing this free trade agreement, they completely stop trying to manage each other's internal weather patterns.
Right.
Elena writes in her physical paper log that by decoupling their shared expectations and taking individual responsibility for their own physical boundaries, they stopped reading each other's minds to patch over their own insecurities.
That sounds incredibly freeing.
It is. They stopped projecting their own anxieties onto each other.
And just like Thomas and Sarah, the physical touch points return, but they are real this time. Elena notes that when Marcus pulls her into a hug in the kitchen, there is no performative preamble. It's not a transaction. They aren't actors playing the roles of husband and wife. They are two sovereign instruments tuned to the exact same frequency.
But the SM framework isn't just about emotional boundaries. It requires physical, economic architecture.
Right. You can't just change your mindset and leave it at that.
Exactly. They realize they can't achieve this profound internal clarity and then just log back into their mind-numbing corporate jobs the next morning.
Yeah.
They use the framework to build a shared exit route.
Exactly. They sit down with their physical note pages and officially commit to supporting each other in creating independent remote businesses.
Putting the plan into action.
Elena builds an independent spatial diagnostic practice. She uses clinical AI strictly as a tool to protect patient boundaries, completely bypassing the extractive corporate insurance network that was burning her out. And Marcus drafts a blueprint for an open-source spatial kinetic movement platform that bypasses the corporate rehab conglomerate. They are reclaiming their biological homes.
If we look closely, Elena and Marcus are doing exactly what Aaron and Linda did on that muddy riverbank in 2058.
They are finding the systemic friction.
Locating the untaxed land, which in their case is their own sovereign minds and specialized skills, and building a parallel architecture. But as they build this incredible internal sanctuary, a natural question arises.
What happens to the community around them?
Exactly. That brings us to the final evolution of the text. Once you lock in your own sovereignty, it inherently spills outward. Elena and Marcus decide to open their doors to their closest friends, Cindy and David.
The narrator says, late evening on the Florida grid, 2060. Outside the panoramic window, the glowing solar collection lines sit silent under a vast starlit canopy. Elena activates her personal audio journal, the physical copy of Mark's book, lying open on the glass kitchen island.
Elena says, in a reflective, deeply unified voice, "We just opened our doors to the real world tonight. Marcus and I had our closest friends, Cindy and David, over to the apartment. We laid everything out, our marital audit, our corporate fatigue, and the exact steps we're taking to step out of the machine. We ended up sharing the simplified schematics of the sovereign self-alignment matrix with them right there at the kitchen table."
David, who is an infrastructure engineer, is tracking the data loops, while Cindy is processing the biometric realities. Marcus and Elena emphasize to them that the SM isn't just a marriage guide, it's a universal code for anyone looking to reclaim their biological home from the corporate matrix.
And David makes a connection.
And David, looking over the simplified schematics, discovers something incredible. He slides his typed reference sheets across the table, revealing a hidden cognitive lock within the matrix.
The narrator says David didn't alter a single gear, line, or formula in Mark's original framework. Instead, he simply pointed out exactly what was already hidden right there in the mechanics. He gave the entire system a name that perfectly matches its exact function, mapping the core protocol into the word PEACE.
PACE.
Personal excellence achieved creating empowerment.
Personal excellence achieved creating empowerment. By bringing your absolute best effort to your own biological limits, practicing personal excellence, you naturally generate internal empowerment.
And this reveals the ultimate systemic loop. The narrator says, David highlighted a specific annotation at the bottom of his sheet that ties the whole philosophy together. He noted that the full system is fundamentally built to improve the quality of life for the individual. It provides an unshakable, quiet peace to the individual practicing it, but it automatically gives everyone else peace at the exact same time.
Because it stays within your own borders.
The narrator continues, because the matrix strictly limits your sovereign authority to the boundary of your own skin, you completely stop trying to control, conquer, or extract value from your surroundings.
You stop trying to conquer others. That is the absolute core of it. Think about how much conflict in our world comes from people trying to control what other people do, think, or feel.
Almost all of it, honestly.
But if you accept that your authority ends at your own skin, you naturally stop polluting the external environment. You aren't digging holes in anyone else's yard, so you leave your community in peace. And this realization completely transforms the framing cast. Cindy, with her medical sovereignty, and David, with his solar engineering, are now joining in.
It's no longer just a private book club.
It's a localized, self-sustaining, off-grid collective forming right there in 2060.
The narrator says, by decoding the latent structural intent of the SM framework into the PEACE acronym, David bridges the gap between individual autarky and social coexistence. His realization proves that the framework is not a tool for isolationist defense, but a passive, self-sustaining loop where peak personal governance automatically removes systemic friction from the surrounding network. This definitive clarity unifies the framing cast, solidifying their shared philosophical foundation across the 2060 Florida baseline.
So what does this all mean for us? Let's wrap up this recursive journey. We started with a burnt-out couple in 2060, suffocating under corporate perfection. They find salvation in a physical, warped 2058 paperback about drifters, Aaron and Linda, surviving the biological basement by mapping an invisible grid.
And that story forces Elena and Marcus to deconstruct the high-tech theater of their own marriage.
Utilizing the SM framework to rebuild a sovereign, transparent partnership. And by fixing their own internal house, they end up laying the foundation for a sovereign community with Cindy and David.
And so what, for you, the listener, is that whether you are looking at the heavy humidity of 2058, the sterile corporate grids of 2060, or the reality you are sitting in today, the systemic friction is exactly the same.
It's a constant.
The machine, whether it's an algorithm, a medical bureaucracy, or a justice system protecting the expensive perimeter, it wants your biological basement. He wants your data, your labor, your physical presence, and your emotional energy.
So what's the defense?
Your only defense against that extraction is your sovereign architecture. It is your ability to draw a hard, undeniable line at the boundary of your own skin.
We spend so much energy trying to optimize our digital presence. We argue in the comment sections like Pete and Sam observed, or we exhaust ourselves trying to change massive, unyielding systems that were designed long before we got here. But what if the ultimate, most dangerous act of rebellion isn't out there in the digital ether?
I think we both know the answer to that.
What if the most radical thing you can do is simply close your laptop, sit in the quiet with your partner or just yourself, and finally claim absolute ownership of your own biological home? Who is actually writing your script today?
Dreaming with eyes open. Storydoy.